In today's episode, we are discussing other persons of interest. The private driver as the last to see two of the victims alive, the fraternity who has members who have either fought with a victim or could be involved with the corruption ring theory, and Brent Kopacka, whose death is shrouded in mystery. Your hosts, Kim and Carlos, have two different opinions about this case. Kim thinks Brian Koberger might be innocent, and Carlos thinks he might be guilty. Let us know who you agree with. As always, everything we discuss is for entertainment and is speculation. Please like and subscribe, and definitely join our discussion in the comments.
If you're ready, let's get into it. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello.
We are going to talk about other suspicious people involved in the Idaho 4 case today. So there are a few scenarios and people out there that the internet has been talking about like crazy. So the first one is the private driver.
Right.
And so that person has actually come out and spoke, and I believe his name is Eric Gower. I don't know if it's Gower or Gower. I don't know. And what we know about him, so private driver because he took Maddie and Kaylee home that night from the grub truck, gave them a ride.
Right. So I erroneously called them like an Uber driver, Lyft driver, something like that. But those companies distanced themselves that it wasn't anybody working from them. It was something local that picked them up after they ate at the grub truck, which there's video evidence of them being there, and were taken home by this private driver. Yes. Right. Okay.
So, and just a little bit around that. So those girls walked to the grub truck with a guy, college student, that they were talking with on the way there. And then when they got there, they acted like they didn't hardly know each other. He kind of stood off in the background. And then you can see the girls on the video, like, just peace out. Like, they just hurried up and rounded the corner to leave. And he was kind of like, what the heck? Like, it almost looked like he was expecting to give them a ride home. I don't know. So this driver, it sounds like it's someone who volunteer. I don't know if it's a volunteer or paid or whatever. You know, he does that. But he is a married man. He's a college professor, I believe at Washington State University. I'm not sure. I know that he lives at Washington State University in apartments there. So, yeah, why? I don't know. College, I mean, I guess it depends what kind of college professor he is, because we know if you're like an adjunct professor, you're not making a lot of money. So you might want to make some extra money, but.
Well, so we say all the time in all the shows that we watch, one of the most important suspects.
Yes.
In any crime is the person to last see them alive. So there could be some, pushback on that, saying, well, the roommates might have saw them alive after they were dropped off,
Right.
But in this case, truly the last person to see them, because the guy that was walking them, just to throw more names into this, the guy that was walking, was he the one that was called Hoodie Guy?
Yes.
Okay, so Hoodie Guy was, I think, an original suspect. I remember very, very early on people saying, you might have been one of them.
Oh, for sure. For sure. He was the most suspect person.
Was saying, I think it's Hoodie Guy, right? This is before we knew anything about really a lot what was going on. And I think that video was one of the first ones to come out.
Yes.
But it's...
Let me talk about him real super fast. So... the reason he was a suspect is because he supposedly left from that grub truck, and it was said that he drove for like 3 hours that night. So after you're out for the night, drove for 3 hours to his parents' cabin, supposedly. These are all allegedly, speculations. And he was also a hunter. So with the way the murders happened, that was a huge red flag. Supposedly he had been kicked out of a fraternity or having issues at the fraternity or something. So there were a lot of oddities around him. And, you know, his parents, I guess, are both doctors. And right after these crimes, they volunteer in Africa at the holidays. And so they went to Africa, and then no one's heard anything. No one's really talked about it since. But he was a big one right away, the hoodie guy.
Right.
But the cops made sure they came out and said, we cleared him.
Right. So yeah, he was a big suspect early on. But this private driver, do you know what he looks like? Is there a description of him? Because, go ahead.
I cannot get an image in my head if I saw his picture or not, but I did hear someone say that he's an avid hiker, and a tall guy. So good physical shape.
Okay. And so, you know, this kind of lends itself a little bit to one of the theories that we had talked about in a previous episode. Why was one of the girls' jackets on the fire hydrant, right? So if you get out of the vehicle, you're wearing this jacket, you get out of the vehicle, you go in the house, why doesn't that piece of clothing go with you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have any... Is there any...
No, I don't know. I mean, that guy was never a big suspect in my mind. Especially, I mean, he came out and spoke. He would definitely, you'd think, be a witness, maybe if he saw something, or he definitely heard the girls. Now, according to him, the girls were only talking about their food that they had purchased, because they didn't eat it at the grub truck. They were taking it home to eat. So he just said they were just talking about, can't wait to get home to eat this food.
And just for perspective, the supposed time of the crime was around 4 a.m., correct?
Yes, and that was another thing that was changed in the case, because when the police first came out, they said 3 to 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then they changed that to 4 to 5 a.m.
Okay. And what time did, because there's timestamps of the grub truck and the time they got home. They probably tracked their phones as well because they were on them. We saw them taking pictures of themselves. And so the phones were on. What time did they get home from the grub truck approximately?
So the police first said approximately 1:45 a.m., but Kaylee's sister, I believe, got a hold of a neighbor's camera and said they got home at 1:56 a.m. Like, she was very adamant about that, correcting the time. So they were home at that time.
Okay. So for this guy, just to pull him in or maybe push him out, for this guy to have done it, he would have had to have dropped them off. DoorDash shows up. You know, he's milling around the area, either stayed there or something, and then go in 2 hours later to commit this crime.
If their timeline is correct, yeah.
What is incorrect about the timeline?
I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence to say that that's the time.
Let me not say it. Let me not ask that question that way. What does the community think that what is wrong with the timeline?
So the biggest suspicious thing is that I believe it came from a family member that they know that Kaylee and Maddie were on their phones texting Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack, for like from 2:30 to 2:53, like just over and over and over again, calling him, texting him, whatever it was, and then nothing after that 2:53 time period. And to me, when that activity stops, I don't know, that seems like that's probably when things started. That's what I think.
Or at some point, if you're doing something for a half an hour, the definition of insanity is if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you keep getting the same result.
Sure, there's all kinds of, maybe they just fell asleep, maybe they passed out, maybe the phone died.
So,
I don't know.
So for this guy, for them to be in the house and to be trying to have those conversations with the next boyfriend, he would have had to have been sitting outside or just waiting by the sliding glass door to come in and murder them and 2 other people. Mm-hmm. So feasibility wise, and
I can't think of a motive for him either.
Yeah, or motive,
but the other thing that's suspicious is that I guess he made sure to tell the police that he had went to Taco Bell that night at like 4 a.m. and had a receipt. So the question is, what was he doing to your point, what are you doing between 2 and 4 a.m. if you're still out and about at 4 a.m.? So, that's suspicious.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's out there. That's the private driver.
Private driver. Okay.
Because that person often gets confused with the DoorDash driver, which has never been named. We don't know anything about. That has been secret. So a lot of people are wondering if that's the secret witness that's going to speak. There's been talk of an informant. Is that, I don't know. But so the DoorDash driver supposedly delivered Jack in the Box at like 4:04, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So just, coincidental. Hey, I was at Taco Bell at 4 a.m. and here's my Do you keep your receipts from fast food?
Typically not.
Unless it's on the floor of my car. And
yeah,
I can just
or in the
out.
bag. Yeah. I don't ask for it and set it aside.
Right.
It's usually crumpled up by the time I set it down. So
okay, so that's the private driver.
And just to put a little bow on that, I think that the 2 things that are hanging out that are somewhat suspicious in my mind, is he was the last person to see those 2, maybe outside of the roommates, but the last person to see them, and the jacket's outside. Why is the jacket outside? And can he speak to that? Hey, I dropped them off here right next to this fire hydrant and, this happened, or, what? I mean, what can he tell us?
Oh, he did speak about that, like not pulling. He didn't pull in exactly to their residence because they have a little parking lot area. It was more on the road, and he said like for his safety, like he doesn't want to get blocked in to a driveway where he's got to like do a turn or back out or something like that. But I do not think he watched them go into the house.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know if...
Well, according to him.
Yes.
According to him. He's the only living eyewitness of that encounter. So
right.
He can say whatever he wants. But, okay. And then another one that we were talking about in previous episodes that seemed to be part of a bigger conspiracy are some of the frat boys.
Yes.
And can we make it gender specific? I mean, are we only talking about the male fraternities on campus, or is there some issue with both genders fraternities? Because I've only heard the male, so I just want to clarify ahead of time.
I've only heard this big theory is about the Sigma Chi fraternity that Ethan was a part of. So Ethan's one of the victims. And Sigma Chi was right, cross a couple streets, cross a yard, and boom, you're there. So not far at all. You can see it. You can see it from the house. And
they walked back from a party that they were at that night.
Ethan and Xana and one of the surviving roommates, Bethany, were at the Sigma Chi house.
Okay. And supposedly, maybe just to help so I can understand a little bit better, because I don't know too much about this, but I understand a couple things about the fraternity. One, we'll talk about the other one here in a second, but the one is that there could have been an argument or disagreement or a fight of some sort that evening of the murders at the fraternity.
Yeah. So I think the fighting, not liking each other started back around Halloween time in October. And there was one particular guy in the fraternity that had beef with Ethan. And supposedly there was a fight, a physical fight that night of the murders. That, and these are all rumors and speculations, but that Xana had broke it up. People have said that it's because Ethan was making fun of this other guy because of steroid use, and the little marbles. That could happen from steroid use, things like that. So that there was a fight. Xana broke it up. And there was also a rumor that this person maybe had a crush on Xana, like he wanted Xana. So I don't know. I've also heard a lot about steroids in that area, and maybe not so much the steroids themselves, but a lot of bodybuilding, which you would associate with that. And to your point, it was girls too. So not just the guys.
Yeah, let's stay on the fight for a second, because that can lend itself to motive, right? Hey, this guy made me look silly.
Yeah. Humiliated
in front of everybody. I'm going to go over and exact some revenge. And for him to do it to both of them who were in the same room.
Yes.
Right. Speaks to that, right? She's part of, she's with him, and maybe went to, the other room and, in a fit of rage or, whatever. But so there's some motive potentially, but so what do we know about this person afterwards? I'm assuming they talked to police. Do we know anything about them? Do we know anything about what they were doing at 4-ish in the morning?
So these are all just rumors that have been said online. The stories are that you could see the house or these girls' rooms from his room, where his room was facing, and that night he had a video game going where, I guess, I don't play online games, but I guess if you're logged in, you can make it look like you're sitting there playing the game, so you have an alibi, but then really not be there. So there was a lot of talk of that. With the brutality of the murders, there was a lot of rage. A lot of people say it was personal, seemed personal. So he had a personal reason, and roid rage is a thing.
It is a thing.
So also, there is video footage. It's body cam footage from undercover cops who were in the field right outside the Sigma Chi house. They had stopped 3 boys, I don't know, for underage drinking, I guess. And while they were in that field, their body cams caught, to me, it looked like 4 people. Some say 5 people in this parking lot coming from the direction of the house where the crime occurred, and kind of quickly walking, creeping behind the cars, headed back towards where the Sigma Chi house is. So those are all that's all the information out there that, I know about that.
For clarification, can you be undercover and have a body cam at the same time?
Yeah, they had it.
Okay.
They were in plain clothes.
Okay.
So plain clothes, no police car.
Okay.
Just a regular hybrid little car that also looks like a white Elantra.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah. Okay.
That was in the area all night. They were right outside the house. I believe this was like at 3 a.m.
Okay.
when they were out there with these kids. And when they originally said the timeline was 3 to 4, there's a lot of, they said it was a quiet night. There was a lot of action going on that night. There's runners through the parking lot. They're stopping kids in a field. The eerie thing is when you watch that body camera footage, you can see the light go out in the house. Like, that's pretty eerie to see that.
So let's talk about the other portion of this, which we talked about kind of a greater conspiracy, first or second episode. So there was a lot of, in some prior episodes, we talked about potential drugs and steroids, HGH or whatever are, could fit into that category as well. And we kind of talked about it as being part of a bigger drug ring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we said, police could be connected to that in some way. Koberger could have found out about that, and that could be part of maybe a frame job. But, you can't have a ring of drugs unless you have users. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like this fraternity and maybe some of the college students, depending on what the drug of choice is, could be a part of that money-making venture for this supposed cartel that is operating in this area. Mm-hmm. So what do we think? Do we think that the fraternities are just potentially a user here? Are they involved in some way to this greater conspiracy? Because I say that because one of the things about the fraternity that's given me pause is less about these drugs and this fight, but more about why were they at the house before the police? Yes. Like, that's what I want to dive into, but there's all this other noise that we got to get around first. But so tell me about the drug portion, and let's get into what I'm curious about, which is why were they there first? We don't think that the fraternity had anything to do with this big cartel that was operating in Moscow, that they weren't users, that they weren't sub-dealers, that they weren't doing anything with any of this, that they have nothing to do with any cartel in this area.
So if the fraternity was involved in that, we already said a couple times on our show that nationwide fraternities are known to be the sellers. So could be that.
Okay.
Definitely users,
yeah.
And the connection to the house in the morning. You made me remember an episode on CJ's show. He did a deep dive into the fraternities, and come to find out, a lot of the fraternity brothers were working as like EMT type workers, emergency medical trainers, which I thought was really coincidental and interesting, because if they're on shift, if they know anything, they could potentially be a first responder. So they could be connected or know about what happened and also show up as the first responder. That has not been talked a lot about, but when I saw that, I was like, wow. So when in the morning before the 911 call went out, we know that there were fraternity members from that fraternity called over to the house in the morning.
So why do you think that?
I mean, part of me understands whenever something happens, I'm going to call my good friends or something like that. Not before 911 though.
Yeah. So we had a conversation. We had a conversation a couple of days ago where you said that some fraternities, they say, don't call the cops.
Yes.
If there's something going on,
you call the head of the house or something.
Speak to that.
So just that, you don't call police. That's like rule number one. And that was another thing that was dug into on shows, is like the rules of these fraternities. And that is a big one.
Okay.
So yeah, you don't do that. You call. So yeah, something happened. We're calling. I don't know why sororities would call a fraternity.
That was mine.
They should have called their
I was just going to say
sorority.
that. Yep,
So
I was just going to say that.
Weird. But again, we don't know the names of everybody that was there. And according to Chief Fry, he didn't know all the names of everybody that was there either, because that's when he said, I don't even know that answer.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of people. There were some photos from that morning. And I mean, it was quite a few kids. I mean, more than a few.
Yeah. So I guess to put a bow on the fraternity, from where I sit, you know, I was kind of given, I don't know who ultimately called 911. Did they say which one called 911?
All we know is that the 911 call went in as an unconscious person.
Right.
That's how it went in.
But we don't know who called 911?
Who called, no, but someone called from one of the survivors' phones.
Okay. So I think what gave me pause a little bit was, and I've tried to explain it away a little bit, was when somebody was seen in the house prior to, you know, well, after the murder, someone was seen that morning, but they ended up locking themselves in the bedroom, potentially fell asleep for 8 hours or whatever, wake up, and instead of calling the police right away, end up calling some friends, potentially some fraternity. You know, I could kind of explain it away that, hey, I was scared, didn't realize there was a murder happening. You know, I locked my door, I hid, you know, I was kind of nestled under the covers, ultimately fell asleep, woke up in the morning, be like, oh my God, what happened? Did I dream this? Did it really happen? You know, and so I kind of explained it away until I realized that, hey, why are you calling these people and not 911, especially if you looked around a little bit, you saw that there was some crazy stuff going on, because, you know, you couldn't get in one of the rooms because someone was unconscious, you know.
So that looks like mad crime scene contamination.
Yeah.
Especially if they all went in the house.
Yeah.
It also looks like cleanup crew to me.
Could be.
You know, what were they? They could have been in there for 8 hours for all we know. I'm waiting to hear the condition of the house.
Yeah.
How much blood was all over the place, that kind of stuff.
So for me, I guess kind of linking this, if the fraternity was called, and let's say they were called for nefarious reasons, because they're part of this big drug conspiracy, right? If we try to tie all these things together, hey, maybe there is somebody trying to set up BK as the patsy. Maybe these are the mules out there doing, the cleanup work, that needs to be done to make this happen. I don't know any of that, and if there was anything that could lead me in that direction, it's just suspect that they were called there first. Is there a big cartel, and is the fraternity a part of it? And, is this a huge conspiracy? I don't believe that, but I just heard a lot of banter online about that.
Yeah, and I don't think people are necessarily connecting the fraternity with the drug ring. I think those are two separate ideas of what could have happened. So they could have known. I think where they intermingle is that people feel like the kids that were involved in that drug scene, in that drug world, knew maybe that someone was talking, that someone was told on somebody, or that something was found. There was speculation that maybe drugs were found and flushed down the toilet. So if the kids know, if the fraternity knows, and the sorority, like if everybody knows,
You told me a couple days ago that, hey,
they know to keep their mouth shut too.
You told me a couple days ago, you were like, hey, everybody on campus knew somebody was going to get put in their place. You didn't think it was going to be to this extent, but a bunch of kids on campus knew that.
It seemed like that.
Seemed like someone was going to get a talking to, or someone was going to get a bloody nose. Didn't know it was going to be something like this, but there was a lot of banter. So to me, like, we're trying to keep them out of that big cartel thing, but we keep saying there's a link, there's a link, there's a link. And if there's a link to them being there to help do something to the crime scene, it's all part of a greater conspiracy. So I kind of want to believe some of the stuff that's out there, but it has to make sense, and it doesn't make sense unless it's part of something bigger. They have to be afraid of something, more than one person besides the little marbles dude, to be involved in this. Would it be like, hey, I'm fearful of my life
because I know something.
Yeah.
I can't talk.
So
for sure.
Are we going to connect them, or are we not going to connect them?
So let's connect it. There's a lot of that going on. Yeah. I can't figure out exactly what it is. Most of the talk is separate, like that it's just that kid from that fraternity that got in a fight. But to your point, it's got to be more than that. Another thing that not a lot of people have talked about, and I don't even know if it's online anymore, but I saw a video where one of the content creators was out there in Idaho and driving around, and it was shortly after, like days after the murder, and they drove past the fraternity house, and the road was lined with black SUVs, like police SUVs were in that fraternity house.
Good.
Now, probably interviewing them, but
could it be for nefarious reasons, right?
Yeah. There were a lot, but there's a lot of people living in that house too, so could be for that. But
so those are, I guess the private driver and the fraternity seem to be a stretch for me. This last one doesn't seem too much of a stretch. And I'll tell you why, here in a bit. But the last one is
Brent Kopacka.
Yes. And tell us briefly, what does Brent Kopacka have to do with this case? Why is he involved here?
So he was a veteran living in apartments in Washington State University, close to where Bryan Kohberger lived. And there was the night that Bryan Kohberger left town, a SWAT team entered an apartment complex where supposedly they say Brent Kopacka was living, and had a standoff for hours. One of the content creators got the body cam footage from that. They claimed that he was holding two of his roommates hostage, but he let them go. They claimed he was shooting out of his windows, and so that's what they were claiming. But on the body cam footage, now mind you, they're claiming that he's holding hostages, he's shooting, he's, going crazy, but they didn't evacuate the apartment building. They let all the sleeping college kids stay in there, next door, above, below, during that time. And then from the body cam footage, you can see them show up, bang on the door, and say, "We have a warrant. We have a search warrant, or we have a warrant for your arrest." I can't remember which one it was, but they were just coming for a hostage situation.
And he opened the door, walked out with his hands on top of his head, and they cuffed him peacefully and took him away.
No.
Oh, okay.
I watched that whole footage, and I never saw him. Never heard him. nothing. And they were...
So how did it end? How did it end?
They killed him.
Okay.
Supposedly
he was killed. Is his family mourning him?
There was an obituary.
Okay.
I haven't heard the family speak. I haven't heard the roommates speak.
Okay.
That was one of the craziest events in this whole thing.
So this person may or may not be dead. Now this is taking even a crazier turn. I thought this person was a really good person to insert in this case, but now with all this, I might be second thinking that, but so this person may or may not be dead, may or may not be real, may or may not have had hostages, may or may not have been shot by the cops. We don't know, right? So let me tell it from my side, from what I heard about this person.
Okay.
So the facts that I understand them was he was shot and killed by the police. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that no one has come out and disputed that and says, no, he might be alive. He's in Montana, in the hills of Montana. That people have come out and said this person, is dead and at the hands of the police. For however, if they did it right or they did it wrong, that fact I haven't heard been disputed until right now. So what interests me about this person is because there was some links, could he be a part of it? He was near, where Koberger lives. I mean, we have neighbors down the street. I don't even know their names. I don't even know what they look like, so it doesn't mean just because they're close, I'm close to Washington. If you measure closeness from here to the moon, it's all in perspective, right? But what really interests me about this guy was that there could have been some link to BK.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about that is supposedly when Koberger was arrested, one of the first things that he said was, did you arrest anybody else?
Yes.
And to me, that was like,
well, that's...
Who else?
We don't know that he said that.
We don't know that he said. So I said allegedly.
Right.
It was said that it could be. But the one thing, because a lot of stuff's going to be debunked, just like Hoodie Guy. Hoodie Guy was the guy until it got debunked, right? This, Brent Kopacka, whatever, he could be the accomplice, or he could have been the mastermind or whatever.
I wouldn't
until
say
it gets debunked.
That it was debunked because we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, just because no one's talked about it or come out, so you can't say. It's just the police came out and said he's cleared, but we don't know why he's cleared.
Yeah.
But the Brent Kopacka thing, I believe one of the camera footage sightings with BK's car, Brian Koberger's car, has him driving down the road that Brent Kopacka lived on that night, and then is in that area for like 8 to 10 minutes. So the speculation is, did he know Brent? Was he with him? Was he picking him up? People say, was Brent his alibi? So they kill the alibi because they're, setting up this guy. Were they together? There were rumors that Brent Kopacka, the one that was shot and killed, was yelling something like, I know who killed those kids, or something to that effect. Mm-hmm. That's just rumored speculation, but if you have not watched that body cam footage of the police in that apartment complex, it's crazy. And Truth and Transparency has it on her channel.
Yeah. So for me, I think, of the three that we talked about today, I thought that one had some legitimacy because for me, if the rumors are true or the speculation is true that he had said that upon being arrested, I don't know of anybody else in his circle, supposed circle. Don't know if this guy's in his circle or not, but they're trying to make some links there, that this is the one person that maybe could have been the accomplice or could have been the alibi or could have been the mastermind or whatever. I see some of the other stuff as, well, we have to take the spotlight off of Brian to put it on Hoodie Guy. We have to take the spotlight off Brian and put it on Marble Guy, right?
No, I don't know Marble Guy. Yeah. No, to me, it's looking at everything that was happening, the events around this, like the odds that he was killed the night that before Brent Kopacka leaves town.
Yeah.
Like coincidental. How many coincidences have we named in this? And even when Brian and his father were pulled over in Indiana and they said, oh, did you hear about what happened? They talked about the shooting. So they knew about it. They knew something. I just feel like Brian was already planning on going home, but I don't know. It just seemed like get out of Dodge, like hurry up and get out, like because they knew something was going down. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what it had to do with the spotlight off of Hoodie Guy or Marble Guy. Did you want to speak to that?
I said it's not putting a spotlight on somebody. It is looking at all the suspicious stuff going on around the events of the murders.
Right.
So you're looking at everything that's going on. What happened with Brent Kopacka? There's a hunter hoodie guy that walked the girls home and looked like he was supposed to ride them. Like looking at all the circumstances around all these people.
So I get it. So I understand what you're saying. What I'm asking is, how can you take, because ultimately, if it's not Brent Kopacka, then who, right? That's the ultimate question that people are asking. If not Brent Kopacka, then who? Maybe not in your community, maybe in my community, we're saying if it's not Brent Kopacka, then who? Mm-hmm. So if you take the spotlight off of him and you put it on Hoodie Guy or Marble Guy, and you're saying, well, you just have to look at everything and put everything into the melting pot and let's swish it around and see. I don't want to do that in this podcast. My question to you is, I want to take the spotlight off of Brent Kopacka and put it on Hoodie Guy. How can I do that?
So you can put the spotlight on Brent Kopacka because there was a quadruple homicide that happened 20 minutes probably away from his house. He was a veteran who had PTSD. He had the police show up at his house and shoot and kill him. And there were rumors that he was yelling that he knew who killed those kids or something like that. So it looked like he was the killer. It looked like he was the person who did it. So the cops showed up. They yelled that they had a arrest warrant and he wasn't giving himself up, and they took him out. That was the spotlight that I first saw when I heard Brent Kopacka. So I just think that there are spotlights you can put on a few different people when it comes to this case for different reasons. We all don't know what those reasons are. So that's why everybody keeps discussing it. One spotlight gets shown over here on this, and so everybody talks about that. And until the facts come out, no one's going to know what really happened. The more hearings we have, like we talked about in our other episode, where we're finding out information that they have or don't have, people are just going to keep talking about that. And I don't know. I think it's interesting to discuss, and we have a lot of topics to dive into.
Absent a hearing or other suspects, what would be our next talking point?
So another topic that might be interesting to talk about in this case would be footage that has been leaked, the cameras that, I've talked about, the Linda Lane footage, that's a big one. Mm-hmm. It really shows the activity that was going on that night. So we can find another topic that we can talk about with this case.
One thing that I saw that I don't know if you saw or not. I looked for it the other day and I couldn't find it again, but there was an animation of how they thought, all this happened, going into different rooms and with the timeline. And I think they laid over some, Ring doorbell or some type of, outside footage of, a car doing a 3-point turn and some audio from one of the neighbors. But I looked for it. I couldn't find it. So I have to look again. But I'd like to talk through that too, because I think there was a lot of speculation that this couldn't be done during that amount of time. Mm-hmm. And, somebody was hearing something, and a dog was barking, but I think it kind of mapped where.
Yeah. And I believe that whole thing was based on the PCA. So here's what the PCA said.
Okay.
And
I didn't know
so
that.
They mapped it out exactly accordingly to that. So yeah, that would be a good thing to talk about.
Yep.
So,
and if any other hearings come up, we, we'll certainly listen to those.
Any other breaking news.
Yep. All right.
Okay. We hope you join us back on our next episode. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, talk to us in the comments, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.